Where exactly does dead matter become a living thought? If you ask a neuroscientist, they'll tell you it's just chemicals. Synapses firing, sodium and potassium pumping back and forth inside a wet piece of meat. They say consciousness is just a hallucination created by complex biology. Wrong. Not a little wrong. Fundamentally, embarrassingly wrong. If it were just chemicals, we would have built a conscious AI years ago, but we haven't. Because the secret to human consciousness isn't biological, it's quantum. Here is a fact that will break your brain. Deep inside every single neuron in your head, there is a hidden structural skeleton made of tiny microscopic tubes. They are vibrating. But they aren't vibrating like guitar strings. They are vibrating at quantum frequencies, acting like literal antennas, tuning into the fundamental fabric of reality itself. You have felt this when you get a sudden flash of intuition, when you feel someone staring at the back of your head, when a memory snaps into your mind out of nowhere. That is not a chemical reaction. That is a quantum collapse happening inside your skull. We are going to find the exact boundary line where physics ends and the soul begins. Let me show you. Close your eyes and imagine a massive, dark canyon. On one side, you have the physical world, apples falling from trees, planets orbiting the hot sun, the solid, heavy stuff you can actually touch and measure. On the exact opposite side, you have your mind, your secret desires, the color red, the raw feeling of loving someone. How do you build a bridge across that massive canyon? How does a physical atom, which has no feelings whatsoever, suddenly wake up and experience the universe? Here's the part nobody tells you. For 300 years, mainstream science completely ignored the canyon. They just pretended it wasn't there. They pointed to the brain and said, "Look, sparks, electricity, case closed." Stop. Think about what that actually means. If your brain is just a biological machine, then you don't actually exist. You are just a sad meat puppet playing out a script written by blind chemistry. Right? Wrong. Physics finally hit a massive brick wall. We zoomed in past the cells, past the tiny molecules, and we found something absolutely terrifying. The old meat-computer theory is totally dead. We are about to cross the impossible bridge. Let's talk about the meat computer. People say your brain is just a biological laptop, but that's just a label. They think neurons are like tiny copper wires. Information goes in, electricity zaps around, and a thought pops out. It sounds logical, but it is completely broken. Think of your smartphone right now. It can calculate billions of numbers in a single second. It can easily beat a grandmaster at chess, but it doesn't feel anything when it wins. It doesn't experience the sweet joy of victory or the cold fear of a low battery. Why? Because a computer is just switches, on and off, ones and zeros. Here is where your intuition completely fails. If you add 1 trillion more switches to that computer, does it suddenly wake up? No. It just becomes a faster, heavier calculator. Complexity does not magically create consciousness. You cannot stack enough dead bricks to create a living ghost. Wait, let me say that again, because it changes everything. You cannot stack dead atoms to create a raw feeling. So, if the brain isn't a computer, what is it? Look at the biology. A single neuron is massive. It's a giant, sloppy bag of salt water and proteins. If a neuron was the size of a skyscraper, the electrical sparks firing between them would just be tiny light bulbs turning on and off in the windows. That electricity is far too slow to explain human thought. It's too messy, too noisy. Yet somehow, your brain binds everything together in perfect harmony. You hear a beautiful song, see a smiling face, and feel a deep emotion, all at the exact same millisecond. A purely biological chemical process cannot move that fast. It physically cannot synchronize that perfectly across your whole brain. Right? Exactly. The biology doesn't explain the magic. The biology is just the thick outer shell. We have been looking at the completely wrong scale. We've been staring at the skyscraper, totally ignoring what is hidden inside the concrete pillars. To find the actual soul, we have to shrink down, way, way down, past the cells, past the synapses, past the sloppy salt water. We have to look at the secret scaffolding holding the whole building up. And when we finally zoom in, we don't find wires. We find something that looks a lot like a quantum piano. Let's shrink down. Imagine you are Ant-Man, diving straight into a single human neuron. First, you pass the gooey outer membrane. It's loud. It's chaotic. People say this outer shell is where thinking happens, but that's just a label. We are going deeper. You sink into the dark cytoplasm, the jelly filling the cell. And suddenly, you see it. A massive, twisting, geometric forest. Millions of perfectly shaped microscopic tubes holding the entire cell together. This is the cytoskeleton. Look. For decades, biologists thought these tubes were just dumb scaffolding, like the wooden beams in your house. They thought they just gave the cell its physical shape. Wrong. This next part is going to sound like magic. It's not. These tubes are called microtubules, and they are not dead beams of wood. They are hollow cylinders made of a special protein called tubulin. If a neuron were a bustling city, microtubules wouldn't be the concrete roads. They would be a hyper-advanced, glowing fiber optic network running completely hidden underneath the pavement. They are processing information independently. A single human brain has billions of neurons, but inside just one of those neurons there are billions of tubulin proteins. Stop. Think about what that actually means. If a single neuron is a computer, then the microtubule network inside it is 1 trillion times more powerful. We zoomed in looking for a simple biological switch, and we found a hidden supercomputer hiding entirely inside the switch. But wait, it gets stranger. These proteins don't just sit there. They flip. They change shape. They toggle back and forth between two different physical states. Snap, 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 like billions of tiny metronomes ticking in absolute perfect rhythm. Why is this geometry so incredibly perfect? Nature doesn't build perfectly symmetrical hollow tubes just for fun. Hollow tubes resonate. Hollow tubes trap things inside them. Hold that thought in your head for a second. Because these tubes are so tiny, measured in nanometers, barely wider than a few atoms, they cross a terrifying boundary. They are small enough to stop playing by the normal, boring rules of chemistry. They are small enough to enter a completely different realm of physics. The biology is fading away. The wet, messy brain is gone. We have reached the edge of the physical world. We are standing right on the border of the quantum realm. And what happens next is where the ghost finally enters the machine. Welcome to the quantum realm. People say quantum physics is just math on a chalkboard, but that's just a label. It is the raw, vibrating operating system of the universe. At our size, the world makes sense. You drop a coffee cup, it falls, it shatters. Things are solid. They have a single, definite location, right? Wrong. When you zoom down into the microtubules, past the proteins, down to the individual electrons spinning inside them, those rules completely break. This is where your intuition completely fails. Try this. Hold your hand right in front of your face. Move it left. Now move it right. Your hand physically cannot be in both places at the exact same time. But an electron inside a microtubule? It absolutely can. It exists in a ghostly state of possibilities, left and right, up and down, spinning clockwise and counterclockwise, all at once. Instead of a solid object, think of a smeared out cloud of maybe. This is quantum superposition. Here's the part nobody tells you. Mainstream physicists used to aggressively laugh at this idea. They said, sure, quantum weirdness happens in freezing cold, dead laboratories, but the human brain? It's way too warm, too wet, and too loud. The quantum clouds would collapse instantly. They thought a wet brain would violently destroy any delicate quantum magic before it could even start. Stop. Think about what that actually means. If the brain is too hot for quantum physics, then consciousness must just be boring chemistry. But nature is vastly smarter than a human laboratory. Let me say that again because it changes everything. Nature engineered a perfect microscopic isolation chamber to protect that quantum magic, the microtubule. Remember those hollow tubes we just looked at? They aren't just empty pipes. The inside of a microtubule is a highly ordered, perfectly structured environment. It pushes the messy, wet water of the brain out. It creates a quiet, insulated tunnel, a safe space for quantum ghosts to dance without being destroyed by the hot, chaotic biology outside. So far, we've learned the brain isn't a meat computer, and it has hidden quantum tunnels. Now watch what this implies. Inside these protected tubes, billions of electrons are smearing out into quantum clouds. They are linking up, wobbling together. But how do these tiny quantum ghosts actually create a human thought? How does a smeared-out electron turn into the smell of fresh coffee? The answer involves the most famous paradox in modern science, and an idea that will completely rewire how you see yourself. Let's talk about the missing bridge. The quantum boundary isn't just a physical place. It's a mathematical wall between two entirely different types of existence. People say consciousness is just firing brainwaves, but that's just a label. They ignore the smear, the quantum cloud. Right? Wrong. Inside the microtubule, billions of electrons are smearing out. They enter superposition. They are 100 different maybe thoughts simultaneously. But a smeared out cloud of maybe isn't a conscious thought. You don't maybe smell coffee. You smell it. Boom. Concrete reality. So how does the smear turn into the solid thought? This is the single biggest mystery in modern science. It's called the measurement problem. When a quantum system is observed or measured, the cloud of maybe instantly collapses into a single, boring, solid reality. If you understand this, you understand the universe. Wait. Who is doing the measuring inside your brain? Is there a tiny ghost sitting in the center of your skull with a tiny clipboard, taking notes on the microtubules? No, that's absurd. That just creates another ghost. This next part is going to sound like magic. It's not. Instead of a ghost looking at the quantum clouds, the universe itself is doing the looking. Hold that thought in your head for a second. Gravity. The oldest, most fundamental force. When a microtubule builds up enough quantum maybe, enough mass smearing out in two different directions simultaneously, the very fabric of space-time begins to stretch. It begins to warp. Space-time hates being stretched in two opposite directions. It physically cannot handle the tension of a massive object being in two places at once. So, what does space-time do? Snap. It violently forces a decision. The superposition collapses. The maybe turns into an is. Let me say that again because it changes everything. The collapse of the quantum state isn't random. It is forced by the actual geometry of the universe snapping back into place. And every single time that microscopic snap happens inside a microtubule, a single moment of raw conscious experience is born. That snap is a thought. That snap is the fundamental unit of awareness. Like a single pixel of your soul flashing into existence for a fraction of a millisecond. But a single pixel isn't a movie. To get the seamless, flowing river of consciousness you feel right now, you need millions of snaps happening in perfect harmony. You need a symphony. Let's talk about the symphony. You hear people say consciousness is just electricity buzzing around. But that's just a label. They think of millions of little independent firecrackers popping off inside your head. Right? Wrong. If they were just independent firecrackers, your brain would be completely chaotic static, pure, overwhelming white noise. Think of someone you know, right now. Picture their face in your head. How does your brain take a million tiny, completely random flashes of light and weave them into a single, perfectly unified, perfectly smooth HD movie. This is where your intuition completely fails. The secret is the vibration. The microtubules aren't snapping randomly. They are singing together. Imagine walking into a massive room filled with 1 billion mechanical metronomes. They are ticking, ticking out of time, ticking fast, ticking slow. It sounds like absolute garbage. But what if they start talking to each other? What if they share a rhythm? This next part is going to sound like magic. It's not. Inside the microtubules, the quantum ghosts are entangled, smeared out, connected across vast distances inside the cell. When one ghost snaps, they all feel the snap. They begin to hum. They begin to wobble in exact phase with one another. Stop. Think about what that actually means. When billions of quantum maybes align perfectly, they don't just collapse into one boring reality. They collapse together, instantly, in perfect unison. That massive coordinated collapse isn't just a pixel of thought. It is a full, complex, conscious experience. It is a musical chord. And the frequency of that hum? It's been measured. The microtubules inside a living brain literally vibrate at gigahertz, megahertz, and kilohertz frequencies, millions of times per second, like the strings of a grand piano being tuned by a maestro. Let me say that again, because it changes everything. Your thoughts are not sparks of electricity. Your thoughts are literal physical vibrations of microscopic quantum tubes harmonizing across the entire brain. When the symphony is playing, you are awake. You are you. You feel pain, love, and the color red. But what happens when the music stops? What happens when the maestro unplugs the piano and the quantum ghosts suddenly go completely silent? Here's the part nobody tells you. We actually know exactly how to turn the soul off, and we do it every single day in hospitals around the world. Let's talk about turning off the soul. People say anesthesia just blocks pain signals, like a chemical wall. But that's just a label. They think of a heavy blanket thrown over the brain's electrical wires, right? Wrong. This is the single biggest mystery in modern science, and it proves everything we've been talking about. Here is where your intuition completely fails. Anesthesia doesn't just block pain. It turns off you, the observer, the experiencer. But wait, it gets stranger. There is no single anesthesia molecule. There are dozens of completely different anesthetic gases. Some are big, heavy molecules. Some are tiny, light atoms like xenon. Chemically, they have absolutely nothing in common. Nothing. So how can completely different chemicals all do the exact same magical trick? How do they all perfectly switch off human consciousness without killing the brain? Stop. Think about what that actually means. If consciousness was just a specific chemical lock and key system, you would need a very specific key to turn it off. But we don't. We just need something to fit inside a very specific space. Let me say that again because it changes everything. The secret isn't chemical, it's physical geometry. Where do these random gases go when you breathe them in? They float right past the big sloppy synapses. They ignore the brain's main electrical wires. They dive deep into the neurons, straight into the tiny, hollow pockets inside the microtubules. They slip right into the exact microscopic chambers where the quantum ghosts are smearing out, where the symphony is playing. And they act like dirty, heavy sponges. They don't break the cell. They just change the vibration. They dampen the quantum wobbling. They absorb the tiny, delicate electron clouds. They stop the smear. Without the smear, there is no tension in space-time. Without the tension, there is no snap. Without the snap, the music stops. The symphony flatlines. The billions of tiny metronomes fall completely out of rhythm, ticking wildly and randomly again. The magic disappears, leaving behind a perfectly healthy but completely unconscious meat computer. This is the smoking gun. When you block the quantum vibration inside the microtubules, consciousness vanishes instantly. But if thoughts are just the universe snapping back into shape, what is actually doing the snapping? Now watch what this implies. We are about to look directly at the architect of reality itself. Let's talk about the collapse of the wave function. People say reality is just made of solid stuff, but that's just a label. They look at a table and think it's just hard wood and space, right? Wrong. This is where your intuition completely fails. The universe isn't a solid brick house. It's a vast ocean of math, a bubbling, boiling sea of pure potential. Let me say that again, because it changes everything. At the bottom of everything, reality is just a set of instructions waiting for an answer. The mathematical wave function. A smeared out cloud of maybe. Try this. Close your eyes and imagine a completely dark room. Now, turn on a flashlight. The light doesn't exist out there, separate from you. It exists because the universe just answered a question. A photon just forced reality to choose exactly where it is. It collapsed from a cloud of maybe into a solid dot. But wait, it gets stranger. Who or what is forcing the universe to choose? Here's the part nobody tells you. Mainstream physics says the math is cold, dead, random. They think a wave function collapsing is just a meaningless accident, a cosmic roll of the dice in an empty casino. But if reality is a random casino, how do you explain the smell of coffee? How do you explain the overwhelming feeling of a sudden memory or a flash of brilliant intuition? Stop. Think about what that actually means. If the universe is completely dead, how did it suddenly wake up inside your skull? The answer is terrifying and beautiful. It never woke up. It was always awake. The mathematical wave function isn't just a dead formula. It has a fundamental underlying property built directly into the fabric of space-time itself. A tiny, microscopic pixel of raw experience. When a microtubule vibrates and causes a wave function to collapse, it isn't creating consciousness out of dead matter. It is accessing consciousness that is already there. It is reaching into the deep ocean of the universe and pulling out a drop of awareness. Now watch what this implies. Your brain isn't generating a soul like a battery generating power. Your brain is a biological antenna. It is tuning into a hidden broadcast that is playing across the entire cosmos. If you understand this, you understand the universe, and you are about to see exactly where the broadcast is coming from. Let's talk about the broadcast. People say you are just a temporary meat computer, isolated inside your own head. They think your thoughts are locked away behind a thick wall of bone. Right? Wrong. This is the single biggest mystery in modern science. If your brain is a quantum antenna, what is it actually tuning into? Here's the part nobody tells you. The mathematical wave function, the raw potential of the universe, isn't just a local accident. It is fundamentally non-locally entangled across the entire cosmos. Let me say that again because it changes everything. The universe is a single, undivided, vibrating web of quantum information. Stop. Think about what that actually means. If your brain is tapping into the collapse of that web, then your consciousness isn't isolated. It is directly, physically connected to the fundamental fabric of reality itself. It is connected to the Big Bang. It is connected to a star exploding 1,000,000 light years away. This next part is going to sound like magic. It's not. When you get a sudden flash of profound intuition, a gut feeling that saves your life, or a brilliant idea that seems to come out of nowhere, where did it come from? It didn't come from your memory. It didn't come from a chemical firing randomly. It came from the web. The microtubules in your brain just synchronized perfectly with a ripple of information flowing through the quantum field. You tuned into the cosmic broadcast for a fraction of a millisecond. Now watch what this implies. You are not a passive observer trapped in a dead universe. You are a focal point. You are a biological lens, focusing the raw awareness of the cosmos into a single temporary human experience. Your thoughts are not yours alone. They are the universe thinking about itself. The universe is experiencing the smell of coffee, the color red, and the feeling of love through you. But if you are just a temporary lens, what happens when the lens finally breaks? What happens when the biological antenna stops working forever? Where does the broadcast go? Let's talk about the end of the broadcast. People say when your biological brain stops, your consciousness simply blinks out of existence. But that's just a label. They think death is an empty, silent black screen forever, right? Wrong. This is where your intuition completely fails. In quantum mechanics, there is an absolute unbreakable rule. Information cannot be destroyed. You can burn a heavy wooden chair to ashes, but the exact quantum information of every single atom still exists in the universe. It never goes away. It just changed form. So what happens to the deeply complex, entangled quantum information of your consciousness when the microtubules finally stop vibrating? Here's the part nobody tells you. When the physical biological antenna permanently breaks, the quantum melody doesn't vanish. It physically cannot vanish. The math forbids it. It just loses its tight local focus inside your skull. The quantum entanglement holding your specific thoughts together gently dissolves back into the infinite, vibrating geometry of space-time. The tiny drop of conscious water simply falls back into the massive, endless ocean of the universe. Stop. Think about what that actually means. Your raw awareness doesn't die. It expands. It stretches out. It leaks back into the massive cosmic web that spawned it billions of years ago. Let me say that again because it changes everything. You are a brief, beautiful vibration in a quantum field that has existed since the literal dawn of time. It's not just biology. It's the fundamental consciousness of the universe, locally experiencing a single human life. If you felt your brain expand today, if you felt that tiny quantum shift in your own microtubules while watching this, hit the subscribe button and like this video. Tune your antenna to this channel and let's keep exploring the absolute edge of reality together. Next time you look up at the dark night sky, don't just see dead rocks and empty freezing space. Close your eyes. Feel the vibration. Because the universe isn't just looking down at you, the universe is you.